She's an eye, she's out and she does.
Start a minute on. Yeah, everybody's here. Yeah, go ahead. Good. This is on. Everything's on. Testing. You good? All right. March meeting of the Greenwich Township Land Use Board is called to order.
This is a regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, in that a notice was published in the Star Gazette and Express Times newspaper. Notice was posted on the municipal bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk.
Roll call.
Paul Beam, Class 1.
Here.
Joseph Chitello, Class 2.
Here.
Frank Marchetta, Class 3.
Here.
Ray Buckwalter, Class 4.
Here.
Bruce Williams, Class 4.
Here.
Kathy Colin, Class 4.
Excused.
Gary Hill, Class 4.
Here.
Don Marie Condas, Class 4.
Here.
Mark Scuderi, Class 4.
Excused. Recused and excused.
Joseph Fiamma, Alternate 1.
Here.
Jeremy Blunt, Alternate 2.
Here.
Bill Cognac, Alternate 3. Pam Peslis, Alternate 4.
Flag salute. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First order of business this evening, we have minutes from our January meeting, so I'll ask if anyone has any comments on the minutes, suggestions, corrections, edits. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve them. Motion. Thank you, Dawn. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Let the record show minutes. Oh, if you're abstaining, raise your hand so we can just record that. So Pam is abstaining and Joe is abstaining, and I think that's it. Got it? Okay, very good. So motion carries. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda, we have Resolution 2020-01. This is a lot line adjustment that was done in January. Mike, do you want to do like a 45-second summary of this? Do we need to? Does everybody remember this? It was
all you're going to do is read the name on the top and the resolution number and the version.
Oh, there's a version? Ah, okay, so this is 2020-03-10 V2. Resolution memorializing minor subdivision approval with C1 and C2 variances to allow lot line adjustments to reconfigure 3 lots to 2 lots.
The name and the resolution number.
Carl Pearson / Carol Beatty, Block 20, Lot 19, Block 20, Lot 17, Block 20, Lot 1701, South Main Street.
And the resolution number when you roll them.
I've said that 4 times. I'll say it again. Resolution number 2020-01. Okay?
Okay?
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
I make motion.
Thank you, Dawn. All right. Roll call vote?
Frank Marchetta?
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter?
Yes.
Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Gary Hill?
Yes.
Don Marie Condas? And Jeremy Blunt?
Yes. Okay.
And Paul Beam, I'm sorry, Paul Beam as well.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, motion carries. Yes.
I have a question on some procedural things concerning that resolution. Can I ask them now?
Yeah.
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. My name is Paul Pearson, working with my sister Carol Beatty on that lot line adjustment that you just approved. And there was a couple minor things at the last meeting you may recall. One was the
Give me a copy of this. Can I make a suggestion? Why don't you just read a copy of the resolution, let the board start the next application, then if you have any questions after you read the resolution, then come up and ask. They just adopted this.
Oh, you haven't seen the draft of this yet, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. My questions might not be with respect to that resolution. It's the information that was requested and required as a follow-up.
It's all in there.
It's all in there.
Good.
Right.
Thank you very much.
The conditions start on page 12. That's what you're going to want to be looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a public hearing. two properties on Main Street that are looking for an interpretation. So is the applicant present?
I can figure out how to put this microphone on.
Is that working?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
You just slide it over. Yeah, just slide
There we go.
Ah, perfect.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kara Kaczynski. I'm with the law firm of McNally, Yarrows, Kaczynski, and Lime, and I'm here this evening representing the applicants. The applicants are the owner of the properties at issue, Jose Gonzalez, as well as the contract purchaser, Marcin Kosier. And these properties, as you know, are located at 551 through 555 North Main Street and 600 South Main Street. So,
I did it as two
Okay, I
separate
see.
reports.
Yeah. Which is South Main and which is the North Main?
551, 555 North, and 600 South.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I knew what you meant. So essentially what the board has before them this evening are requests for an interpretation pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70B, that the ordinances that are applicable to each property that I'll go through for you currently permit the current uses. And then the alternative, if the board disagrees, we've requested certifications of pre-existing non-conforming uses pursuant to Section 68 of the Municipal Land Use Law.
Yeah, a quick question for you. Is there any reason why you couldn't go for the Section 68 first? And if you get that, forget about the 70B? Because looking at Beth's report, and I'm not prejudging anything, I just give them advice, and I don't know how they would come out on it, but from Beth's report, it seems like you have a better shot legally with the 68 than the 70B. Maybe you don't think your facts are stronger. If you have good facts, could you go with the 68 first, or are you set on going with the 70B first?
Honestly, I was going to do both of them at the same time. Again, because the issues with regard to the two interpretations are, one goes back to 1999, one goes back to 2006. So the time periods that we're looking at are a lot shorter. I certainly am not going to contradict your board attorney, so if...
No. I'm asking you. If you want to go both, it's your application.
So in plain English, John, you're asking if we should go for the certification rather than the interpretation.
I'm asking her if she'd rather ask you to go...
Understood.
Yeah, for the certification first, and then if you don't get it, then go for the interpretation.
Again, I was going to do both of them at the same time,
Okay.
and then, but I'm happy to go that route if that's the way the board would prefer. Personally, I think I can get you through these very quickly, just doing one after the other, and then the board can decide with the advice of your counsel as to how motions would be made and et cetera. So I'm really trying to get you in and out as quickly as possible, which leads to the next question that I have, which is whether or not the board would be interested in consolidating these for purposes of a hearing.
Right, so the board can consolidate two applications into one for a hearing and then do separate motions on them and separate resolutions. This board hasn't had, a cell company come in with multiple sites, but some of my other boards, for example, Verizon came into one with 3 sites. T-Mobile came in with 2 sites. So those boards consolidated those hearings so they didn't have to hear a lot of the same stuff 2 or 3 times. So that's up to the chairman as a procedural matter, but then up to the board if they didn't agree with his decision, or you can consult with everyone. But legally, in my opinion, if you wanted to try to make it more efficient, you could consolidate the 2 applications for one hearing.
I'm not opposed to consolidating them. The question I have would be they're in 2 different zones.
Correct.
There's 2 different time frames.
Correct.
So it sounds like we'll be listening to 2 separate cases anyway because the facts of the cases are different. If you think it's still more expedient to present them together, then I have no objection.
The only reason why I would make that recommendation or suggestion to the board is there may be an aspect of this that requires analysis of abandonment as an issue, and that certainly could apply to both in the event that the board does not determine that the existing ordinances allow the properties to be used in the way that they are. So the way I've basically set this up is to go through 551 to 555 first, go through the interpretation, go through the proofs with regards to the non-conforming uses, do the exact same thing for 600, and then give you legal analysis with regard to the abandonment issue to the extent that the board needs to hear that, to show that the uses have not been abandoned, which presumably could really apply in either case.
So I have no objection, and I've just asked the board, does anybody on the board object to combining these? It might be more expedient to do it that way. I hear no objection, so, yeah, go ahead and proceed.
Great, thank you. So first, I think we had two completeness items, because I think this is before the board tonight for completeness as well as hearing. So I just wanted to make sure that we dealt with those before we went forward.
Mike?
No, I believe the completeness items that Ms. Kaczynski's referring to were I don't even know what they were, because so many months have passed.
Well, okay, so let me make this easy for you, Mike.
Well, yeah, because, go ahead.
So item 2 of your checklist, that's required 16 copies of the maps and everything, so we're dealing with interpretations and certifications, so really I don't think maps were necessary. We have provided you with surveys, we have provided you with copies of photos, so I think that's really enough of what you need, in addition to obviously your knowledge of the properties. And then the other one was a zoning data table, again, which is usually provided on a map. So the third one we had asked for at the time of filing the application were waivers from the photos. They've since been presented to the board. So it was really just items 2 and 9 that we would be looking for.
So in order to deem this complete, Mike, we do need to act on these waivers 2 and 9. Do you have any objections?
No objections at all. And I know not every board member got the email today. I unlike almost every application that appears before this board, I didn't do a report because Beth did, based upon the nature of the application in question. And, you know, completeness is a little bit of a stretch on an application like this. So I take no exception whatsoever to granting those waivers.
Okay, so we do have to act to deem them complete. And since we're combining this, John, can we do that with one motion?
Yeah, motion to deem both of them complete, and then again, whatever the board does, I'll have separate resolutions, but.
All right, I'll make that motion.
And we're granting waivers on items 2 and 9, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, 2 and 9.
Okay, so, we have a motion. Bruce made a motion. Need a second? And a roll call?
Paul Beam?
Yes.
Joseph Chichella?
Yes.
Frank Marchetta?
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter?
Yes.
Bruce Williams?
Yes.
Carrie Hill?
Yes.
Don Ray Condon? Yes. Joseph Fiamma?
Yes.
And Jeremy Blunt?
Suggestion, before we start your case in chief, it looks like Mr. Pearson. Do you have questions now?
Minor questions. I read the conditions and I agree with them, and I think we've completed them, but I have a drawing. I don't know if I should give that to your engineer tonight. I have the deed preparation. I don't know if you want that tonight or can you send me the
You should send them to him via email, unless you want to take them tonight. If you take them
No,
tonight,
I'm actually leaving tomorrow, so no, I would email them to me. It'd be better.
Yeah.
Send them to
Yeah.
the engineer.
well, whatever the resolution says to send them to, send them to. So if I were you, I would send them to the board secretary with a copy to the engineer.
Ray?
No?
Oh,
Susanna.
okay.
Yeah, just to dot the I.
Land use, it's the address that we use for the land use board.
landusesec@greenwidgetownship.org.gov.
You can go to the website and get her email address, but dot the i's, cross the t's, just so she has a record that you sent them in, and Mike's gonna review them. You can expedite it if you send a copy to Mike.
Original to the engineer, a copy to her.
I don't know.
Well, if you're sending an email there, it doesn't matter. And then, Mike, do you need to get original documents?
I'll look. No, I don't need original.
You just send them an email and attach the documents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is he taking that resolution?
Hmm?
Is he taking your resolution?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, he's taking Ray's resolution.
Yeah, that was my copy.
Yeah, no problem. It's not signed.
I'll sign
I
it.
need one, I have an extra.
No. I think you're back on.
Thank you. So now, where am I? Notice. Copies of the original affidavits of publication and proofs were provided. I just want to make sure notice was proper. We don't have any issue there.
Yes. That's proper.
Okay. So, let's get going. First property we're dealing with tonight, 551, 555 North Main. Block 16, Lot 22. It's a .28 acre parcel located on the easterly side of North Main Street. This property is located in your RCD district and currently contains 4 residential units in one structure and 1 residential unit in the rear structure. And as I'm sure you know, multifamily dwellings are not permitted in the RCD district. Now, with regard to our request for an interpretation, Section 16-6.6A of your zoning ordinance permits uses on non-conforming lots in existence as of the date of adoption of the RCD ordinance in which this property is located. And it allows them to continue to exist and change in accordance with ordinance provisions in effect as of the date of adoption of the ordinance amendment. That ordinance amendment was adopted July 20th, 2006. So essentially it says, non-conforming uses on non-conforming lots in existence in the RCD district are allowed as of the date of that ordinance, July 20th, 2006. Later on in that ordinance, we specify certain zones in contradiction to that first statement that says that these uses in the R7, R2, R1, TC, B1, and B2 zoning districts are the ones that are allowed to replace non-conforming uses. So it basically goes from saying all non-conforming uses in this zone that is replaced with the RCD.
Where does it say non-permitted uses? It says permits uses on non-conforming lots. Where do you see non-conforming uses?
So to permit uses on non-conforming lots in existence as of the date of adoption. Then it goes on to say, the provisions of this section apply to structures and uses on lots made non-conforming in the following zoning districts. So it goes through those 6 zoning districts.
So which district was this located in before it was zoned RCD?
So interestingly enough, if we go to the actual ordinance, and that actual ordinance was attached as Exhibit G to our March 2nd submission with regard to this property, the actual ordinance itself states under Section 2 that this RCD district replaces the industrial zone with this new RCD district. So it's a little confusing at best as to why non-conforming uses in zones outside of what the RCD district was intended to replace would be allowed to continue as a result of the adoption of the RCD district. It makes much more sense that if the RCD district replaced the industrial district, that non-conforming uses on non-conforming lots in the industrial district would be allowed to continue as a result of the replacement with the RCD.
But it doesn't say that, right?
Well, it doesn't, and that's correct. That's why we go to the ordinance construction. And when we look at the land use law and the legal analysis of ordinance construction in situations like this, and specifically the Supreme Court case of State Township of Pennsauken versus Shad, and just for the record, what's 160 NJ 156, that's a 1999 case, talks about the principles governing interpretation of zoning ordinances are the same as those governing interpretations of other ordinances and legislation in general. And primary regard must be given to the purpose for which the legislation was enacted. And a sense of that is gathered from the nature of the subject matter, the context, the history, as well as the reading of other statutes.
Isn't that if there's an ambiguity?
Well, clearly there is.
Well, clearly there's not. I mean, you're trying to make an ambiguity, but the ordinance, to me, is clear on its face. It lists the districts. You're saying that there's a mistake in the ordinance.
Well, what I'm saying is and again, that case also dealt with where literal reading will lead to a result not in accordance with the essential purpose and design of the act, which I submit to this board here, is the replacement of the industrial district with the RCD district, not a replacement of all non-conforming uses in these 6 zones by virtue of the adoption of the RCD district.
So
the spirit of the act would control.
So what we're really trying to decide is whether it's written with ambiguity or whether it just doesn't make sense, but it's written in an unambiguous way.
And by virtue of that, what that would allow our client to do is provide you with proofs going back to 2006 that this property was in fact utilized as a 5-family home. Now,
but see, that's why I suggested you just go for a certification.
I'll get there now.
Okay, because instead of asking them to basically interpret an ordinance in a way that's different than what it's written because you say it doesn't make sense as written, if you can prove that what they had there lawfully existed prior to the adoption of an ordinance that made it non-conforming under the statute, there's no discretion.
Agreed.
They have to certify it or they don't.
So that's where I'll go right now. So now that you understand the ambiguity with regard to that ordinance when it was enacted, what it replaced.
So hold on, they're not going to concede that there's
No.
that there's an ambiguity there.
I actually don't think it's ambiguous, I just think it's illogical, which is not the same thing.
So you're right. My apologies. I used the wrong word. You may not understand. I presented to you my arguments with regard to why that is illogical, maybe not ambiguous, but why you have the ability to look at that date as the date that we must prove to you that the 5 families existed on that lot. However, in the alternative, as I said, we are also here for a determination of a pre-existing non-conforming use on that property. And what we presented to you by virtue of our March 2nd submission is a timeline. And along with that timeline is photographs as well as tax records. And you can see right there.
Whoa, where is the timeline in this package of information?
Okay, so the timeline was submitted. We have the cover sheet, photographs, land survey, and then the evidence memo.
So
after the photographs.
Here, can you just take one? This is what everyone has. Can you come up to the podium and tell us what page that timeline's on in that package? That's in the order of what you submitted.
I think this is it, right?
Right at the end of the photograph.
Starts in 2002, or maybe I grabbed the wrong page. This is the beginning?
Okay. Does everyone see the timeline right after the last photograph in the package? Just flip through all the photographs, get to the last photograph, and then the timeline's on the next page.
Yeah, they're all
The picture before it is a bunch of electrical meters, if that helps.
Correct.
Now, Frank, you might have, that might be the package for 600. This is the package for 551.
Yeah, it's the one that has the drawing on the front, not the one that starts with the photograph. Sorry.
Next time you do something like this, it would be very helpful if you had like a cover sheet with an index and then page numbers or exhibit numbers or something.
They had a cover sheet with the first 3, but I can certainly, next time I'm before this board, make it a little bit easier
Any
for you.
boards I represent, for that matter. When was the first ordinance adopted in Greenwich Township?
1977, from what I understand.
Okay, were multifamily dwellings allowed on this property when the ordinance was adopted in 1977?
Well, the problem with that is that we can't find zoning maps going back to that point in time. So that's been very difficult for us to discern. We came to the board, we did numerous OPA requests, we've asked for everything from the libraries to the multiple family dwelling
Did you
records.
check with the county?
Yes, we did.
And the county didn't have it?
No. Checked building
Mike,
departments.
Mike.
I checked with Mike too.
I sent Kara some information the other day, but it only went back from
2003.
more in-house records. Yeah, exactly, 2003.
Okay, in 2003, was multifamily allowed on the property?
It was not based upon what Mike provided.
It was used to be the R75 zone then, at least, well.
So put it this way,
So, no,
if
it
the
was not.
first ordinance was adopted in 1977, okay, now, and how do we know that the first ordinance was adopted in 1977?
Just based upon your ordinances, the very first reference to any ordinance in your existing book is 1977.
So it seems to me, all you have to do is get 4 units in the front building and 1 unit in the rear building in existence prior to 1977, and it doesn't matter what the 1977 ordinance said. If you can prove that this use was in existence prior to the first ordinance, you've proved that it's grandfathered.
It's pre-existing to any ordinance.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so can you focus on what do you have to show? Do you have anything to show that that these uses were in existence prior to 1977?
What I have here is what's on that list. And the very first thing that we have is the tax record and appraisal card from April 19, 1986, that identifies the 4 apartments and the one residence in the rear.
So the earliest thing we have is 1986.
Correct.
So then do we need to know?
So, I'm just curious, why couldn't you get something before 1986?
Because I would have had to find something that was unavailable, John. I've looked everywhere. I've looked with the town. We really unturned every stone to find something.
I think the first income tax in the state was Governor Byrne in like 1976 or 1977. Prior to the income tax, there was actually a tax on residences, on occupants of residences. So in the county, there should be, the only reason I know this is I had to do this for my house that was built in 1928 in Essex County. So prior to the first income tax, there's records in the county, and you can go look up the property, and it will show you how many occupants were there. So that would get you prior to 1977, because the board's going to have to deal with there's a 10-year gap. I don't know what to tell the board. Present the case, but I don't know what to, I thought it was going to be, if they had proof before 1977, they're entitled, but you have no discretion.
And we don't know in 1977 if that zoning allowed multi-dwellings or not. We don't have.
There's no records, Mr.
Okay, how about
Chairman.
1986? What ordinance was in effect in 1986? Do you know that?
We have copies of every ordinance that was available with regard to this particular property.
So what's the earliest ordinance you have?
So, bear with me. So 2003 is the zoning ordinance that Mike provided, and I believe that predates the one that's on, yeah, so 2003 is the earliest one that we have.
Okay, but under that 2003 ordinance, multifamily was not allowed on this property, correct?
Correct. So, and again, the county did not have any other information with regard to this, and the tax records of the town did not go back prior to 1986.
That's why they wanted the interpretation under 70B. Because they can't, or they have a problem under 68.
So if we continue to look at those proofs, and we continue to look at the fact that this has been a multifamily dwelling since, again, recognized by the town since at least 1986, if not earlier,
Well,
and that has not changed.
right, it's been recognized by the tax assessor, right? I mean, when it says recognized by the town, it's been the tax assessor, that's where you got it from, right? You got appraisal cards.
Correct.
Right, but
And they're in the town.
I understand, but there's no case that says if the tax assessor taxes it that way, that's
You're absolutely
binding
correct.
on
You're
the
absolutely
zoning
correct.
officer or the Board of Adjustment.
However, this board is bound to look at all of the evidence in its totality, and it cannot ignore documentation that was provided and relied upon by its own municipality. So there's specific case law to that effect.
Okay, well, who's relied on the tax assessor's records other than the tax assessor? If the zoning officer, has the zoning officer relied on this? Do you have anything from the zoning officer for any of these years?
There was nothing. However, it has been taxed, and taxes were received, and taxes were assessed.
Well,
for
that
five
I
families.
understand, but that's not a zoning issue, that's a...
I understand. I understand. Again, this board's,
This is the property that has 4 units in one building and then a separate building with a
Correct.
separate unit,
In the
correct?
back, right.
Because I'm looking at the first,
This one, here's the picture.
yeah, I'm looking at the first, the record, an appraisal card, the first thing that you have after the timeline. Just to try to get a sense of what you presented here, and it shows apartment 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see apartment 5.
excuse me one second.
You know, on the bottom of that, Unless there's a separate appraisal for that building.
Unfortunately, it ends up always coming back to me, and I go through my files, but, you know, before, I don't even use the file. So my files only go back to like.
And again, I just want to reiterate for the board that we sat here, looked through all tax documentation, looked through whatever zoning documentation there was from the borough, from the town, and there's nothing available for us to
I'm
look
looking at the property record
at.
and appraisal, and this seems to show 4 apartments, but then there's a separate appraisal, it says card 2 of 2, so maybe that's a separate building?
That's the separate outbuilding in the
Okay,
rear,
so then there are
yes.
5, it's 2 buildings.
Yes,
That makes
correct.
sense. And what year is this? This is 1986.
Right.
So that's why all the information that's attached does dovetail with the list.
So the earliest thing we have showing, the earliest documentation we have is 1986. Is that,
And understand, that is the earliest documentation that the town has. It's not that we picked and choose the information to
No, I
provide
understand.
here. I mean, that is the earliest information that we were able to get from the town.
so then, everything beyond that is irrelevant, right, John? Because this is the first thing we have on the timeline, which does show 5 units, so it,
Unless they have some witness. Do you have a witness that knows? That's a witness in Raritan Township. We had a witness from Texas and a witness from Ohio, and we let them testify over FaceTime, so the owner didn't have to come out. Do you have any witnesses?
I do have witnesses.
Can they trace it back before 1977?
So I have a witness with regard to 600.
Yeah, I'm talking about 550.
I understand that. Yes. Your information, your knowledge is not with regard to 551, 555, correct?
I always remember a lady living in the one side, and
You know what, why don't I have you come up here and swear you?
Just before you bring her up, find out if it's 551, the
It's definitely
555, or
600.
600. Okay.
up the street.
So-
Come on.
Can you raise your right hand? Your right hand.
I didn't plan on saying.
Yeah, you're trying to trick me. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Deborah A. Smith.
Okay.
Okay, so, Ms. Smith, where do you currently live?
609 South Main Street.
And are you aware of the property located at 551 to 555 North Main Street?
Yes.
Okay, and how long have you lived at 609 North Main?
Basically, all my life was 7 years, and I'll be 66.
So 59 years. Okay. And what is your earliest memory of how many residences were at 551 to 555 North Main?
My Nana lived up there, and I'd say I know there was 2, and the one in the back, there was one that lived over top of the garage in the back.
Okay, so 1 in the back and 2 in the front?
That I can remember.
And what year was that you can remember? What's the earliest you can remember?
Oh my God, I was in grade school. I can't remember years.
you said
I'd
you
say
lived
in
there
the
since,
60s.
you said you lived there since you were 7?
No, I lived on 609 South Main all my life, all but 7 years. 7 years I lived in Finesville. Other than that, I lived all my life at 609 South Main.
Okay, so probably, since I'm doing some math, probably, I mean, you go back to 1955?
I was born in 54, and when I was born, I came
Okay,
to
so
that
saying
house.
1955, so your
Yes.
testimony predates any zoning that we have.
There's no way she remembers in 1955 when she
No.
was 1.
No,
Okay, so
don't remember that.
let's say you remember, in the 1960s, you remember 1 unit in the back and 2 units in the front.
Yes, because my Nana lived up that way, and I used to go up all the
Okay.
time.
Okay, at least 2 units in the front.
Yes,
2? Okay.
yes.
Okay, and then I have some testimony from her with regard to 600.
Okay, so you got 2 units now.
That's all
what
I
she
can
wrote.
Right, I get it. Okay, so now you're
At
gonna,
least I got 3.
yep, yep.
For purposes of our decision, does it matter if it's 5 or 3?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it multi?
Oh, no, all right. Okay, so now you're aware of 600 South Main?
Do you want to jump
Yeah,
right over to that?
let's go, you've got it
right
up here,
across
let's
the
go for
street
it.
from me.
Okay, so you live across the street from 600 South Main?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your earliest recollection of the number of units in that building?
It was a funeral parlor. Frank passed away, and then it went into apartments, I'd say, in the late 60s, early 70s,
And how many units do you remember there in the late 60s, early 70s?
or there was one on the side, one upstairs in the back, one in the front, and one in the front downstairs.
4. Okay, it looks like you got a touchdown with 600.
I always knew that was my bet.
So, whoa, does anyone have any questions for this witness?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any other witnesses on 551?
I do. I have a tenant that lives in both 551 and 600, and I have another tenant that currently lives in 600.
Prior to 1977?
Yep. Excuse me 1 second.
Just a question. Are we trying to establish that it was multifamily, or exactly how many were there?
No, exactly how
Exactly
many?
how many.
Does that count?
Exactly how many?
I just asked that question.
Okay. Multifamily wasn't allowed, okay? That's clear. They're seeking a certification on a certain number of units.
Okay.
Are you with these guys? Okay. You're sitting apart from those guys. You like them?
He's the dirtiest person in space.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I'm going to ask Deb a few more questions, see if we can clarify this for the board. So going back to 551, 555 Main, you said you remember 2 units and then a unit in the rear?
One on each side, and the one in the back that was like over a garage.
Okay, so the 2 on each side that were in the front.
They were
building,
together.
They were together.
One, it was like a big house with an apartment on one side and one on the other.
Do you know do you know if there were 2 apartments on each side? Or if there was just one? Do you have any?
I remember 2 little ladies coming out and talking to my grandmother and I. One out of this side of the
And one out of that
house,
side.
and one from this side of the house.
Had you been inside, do you know if there were,
I was in the one kitchen, yes.
okay, I'm wondering, are there upper story units?
That I did not,
Okay. I thought maybe it might be 1, 2, 3, 4.
I
but we
did
just
not
don't have
know.
it.
Well, that certainly is exactly what it is. However, we're just trying to get her best recollection. It was a long time ago.
No, I remember the garage in the back with one over it, and it was a big house, one on this side and one on this side.
Okay.
Are the entrances for the 4 apartments in that building, are they all in the front of the building, or are they 2 in the front, 2 in the back?
2 in the front, 1 on the side. You actually have photographs
Yeah,
in that package.
just asking, because I thought maybe...
And actually, one of the witnesses that I have, that was part of the reason why I brought them here, not only to substantiate the uses, but also to go through the photographs, to explain what each one of those doors are, to the extent that the board, was unaware of the specific unit. So I'm happy to bring that up. I'm not trying to belabor it, but I'm happy to bring that up if that helps.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ma'am,
Yes,
I know this was a long time ago, but do you happen to recall if there were multiple mailboxes, the number of mailboxes?
that is true, I don't remember, no, I don't know that.
There's 5 there now.
I mean, that's something that I saw. I mean, I see 5 mailboxes there now.
Yeah. I think there's actually a picture of 5 electric meters.
There is,
Right.
there is.
5 mailboxes.
I'm curious if you can recall.
I have no idea of that.
Were you able to capture any dates on these stickers that are on the side of the electrical boxes?
I do have the person that took the photographs. I can bring them up. I think those were the best pictures that we have.
And that's another question. Have you contacted the electric company to see when they first had the multiple power? What did they say?
They were not able to provide us with any information. I went through telephone records, through...
But this is all making me feel a lot more comfortable with my criminal past.
No, your criminal past they can find. Your electric bill, no.
Okay. No electric bills, no tax records.
Any census records out there that we can,
That would be,
census?
We did not look at that. Did not look at that.
I'm sure, is census data available at that level for
I
an
don't know.
individual unit?
I have no idea.
Not publicly.
College from 1940.
What's that?
I was able to look up the census in Pennsylvania, in Anacostia, Pennsylvania,
Really?
1940, so
Huh.
might be something.
What about Sanborn maps? Like the old historic map that showed historic buildings? I really don't know if it specifies the number of units.
It doesn't.
I don't think it
doesn't.
would.
No,
Yeah,
that's
It's just
not
the
gonna
structure
Yeah,
itself?
we also
Yeah.
had the Sanborn.
Wells,
maps in
et
that
cetera.
case.
Yeah, I mean, you'd see wells, you'd see all that, but
Yeah,
What about the
okay.
post office thing? I don't know how long that they, but if something before 1977.
That's a good point. Yeah, did you try contacting the, I don't even know if the post office has records.
they don't. The telephone records didn't have anything either.
I understand, but did you actually contact the post office to see?
I don't believe we contacted the post office.
So the post office and the
Census.
census. I can't find it now from last week. I mean, you could, put on the other witnesses, but you could go for a vote on certification for 600 tonight, and then ask to come back and do a little bit more research with the census and the post office.
Agree.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since the properties are broken up in such a way that it's, first floor unit on the left, first floor unit
We're talking about 551?
on the right.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it was only a two-family back in the day, I would imagine that there would have been stairs to get up to the second floor inside the floor units. Is there any pictures or indication that that stairway was taken away or blocked to show separation?
So why don't you put on the other witness, because someone's gonna know about that.
We'd have to know when it was blocked.
So
No. Okay, can you identify yourself for the record? Microphone.
Jose Gonzalez?
Good idea.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony that you're gonna be giving in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Are you the current owner?
I am?
You also currently live there?
No.
Okay, and how long have you owned 551?
2000, excuse me.
551, December 27, 2007, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And 600, does December
year later.
21st, 2009 sound correct?
So in regards to 551 through 555, 551 is the house that sits in the back of the property, the small house. That's one unit, two-bedroom.
That's the one that's over the garage?
That's correct. The old garage, it's not. And the house in the front is, you have two houses, 553, 555. You have 553A, which is the first floor apartment, 553B, which is the second apartment, then 555A on the first floor, and 555B on the top floor. Okay, so it's broken up into four different apartments. Everyone has their own access entry, front and back to the house. That leads to the backyard, they have a back entry, and they have a front entry that leads to the front of the house. There's a staircase in the middle that goes to each apartment. So you walk up the staircase, go to the right, that's 555B, go to the left, 553D. Okay, and then downstairs they own an apartment. So the answer to your question is, everyone has access to their own apartments, front and back of the house. So it's split, it's a duplex in essence, right? But if you have an apartment upstairs, downstairs, and obviously downstairs and upstairs again. I hope that clears it up.
Now, he can go through the photographs he took.
Ask your question to him.
is there any indication that the access to the second floor from the first floor was covered up or
No.
drywalled or anything like that?
No.
How did they get to the second floor before we became a 4-unit?
I'm assuming when they made it a 4-unit, well, if they used the original staircase, and then so the answer to your question would be yes, clearly, right? The drywall to separate it, when they separated the apartments. So what I'm thinking is, at one point, when it was used as a 2-family versus a 4-family, okay, that they cut up the middle, drywall, and separated the apartments.
Well, depends on when that was done.
I know.
It all depends on when.
Yeah, but you have no idea when it
No,
was done.
absolutely not.
So in the back of the house, there's a picture that shows, looks like an addition, looks like there was a staircase built onto the back of the house at some point.
Now, which photograph are you looking at?
Boy, I just flipped through all these and,
We could start from the very first one, and he can,
so this photograph, it looks like there was a staircase that would have been on the exterior, but it was enclosed. So the picture that shows the back of the house from a distance with some wooden steps, and as you face the back of the house on the right side, that appears to be a stairway just by the rake line.
So that's my point. So each apartment has their own entrance from the back and from the front.
Oh, so there's 4 entrances.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the fourth?
On the side
on
of
the
the house.
side.
Side, right,
Yep.
yeah.
So each apartment has 2 entrances?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to for
Fire.
You have to by
code?
By code, you must.
So,
When?
can I ask a question here? So by deed
Another one?
searches, this has changed hands quite a number of times. Don't the deeds show that maybe this is the attorney?
No. Did the deed show anything other than who owned it?
No, it doesn't tell you,
Yeah, that would be way too easy.
Of course it would.
that was my first question when I
Yes.
spoke to my attorney. I'm like, well, what if I
What
family?
they should do is they should do that. It should be certified by the zoning officer, and then everything would be taken care of, and we wouldn't be here. I do have testimony from the contract purchaser, who's also a licensed electrician, that can testify as to the existing wiring in that main building on 551.
Bring him up, that's it. That's right. Can you identify yourself for the record?
My name is Marcin Kosiev.
You gotta do that louder.
Marcin Kosiev,
And can you spell the first name?
Marcin. The last name is Kosierv.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Kosar, were you the contract purchaser of 551 to 555 Main?
Yes, I am.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a licensed electrician. I'm a licensed electrician in New Jersey and 20 more states. I have license since 2012 in New Jersey. I also have inspector license. And the way when we did the inspection on the houses and I look at the wires and boxes and whenever that was separate, the electric, to the apartments was
Okay,
separate.
so hold on 1 second. So let's just finish your qualifications.
Okay.
So you've been licensed excuse me, and a licensed electrician in the state of New Jersey since
2012.
2012. Okay. And your license is current?
Yes.
I'd like to offer him to the board as an expert electrician.
No objection.
Okay, so with regard to 551 to 555,
One question. Just one question. Are you the buyer?
Yeah, it's not, right, just so you know, it's not a conflict. You can take that into account, that he might be self-interested in that, but he can be qualified as an expert in his own case.
That's me. I just want to make sure.
so did you have the opportunity to review and investigate the electrical wiring at 551?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And when we talk about 551, 555, we're talking about the main building that is comprised of 4 units, correct?
Yes.
And could you explain to the board what you saw when you took a look at the wiring?
I look at the boxes, and those boxes are pretty old. I would assume they are around 1970s.
Oh, you assume?
Because the way, the way I'm electrician since, I'm an electrician 20 years, then I did a lot of
When did you get your electrical license?
2012, but I'm an electrician since 1999.
Okay. Can you identify by looking at an electrical box if it's a 1980s box or a 1970s box?
Yes, because the factory was made, and also the wire where it's separate to the units, they old, they not like a plastic Romex wires when we use them right now, and then probably since 80s.
So are the wires in this house in the I guess, the, whatchamacallit, metal?
Yes, in the metal, and
what's the name for that?
BX.
Yes, BX, thank you.
Yes.
So the wires in BX, when did wiring switch over to Romex?
1980s, I think. Yes, 1980s. I don't know exactly. I can look it up right now.
Let's find out right now.
Yeah.
Okay, did you take pictures of the electrical boxes?
I don't.
The front, I'm not talking about the meters. Did you take pictures of the electrical boxes?
No, I did, and yeah, the inspectors did it, but I don't have them.
Do you know the manufacturer of the electrical boxes?
It was Cutler Hammer. Cutler Hammer.
Cutler Hammer, yeah.
Yes.
Are they still in business?
Yes, they do, I think.
Did it have a model number on that Cutler Hammer box?
Probably. Probably.
Okay, do you remember what the model number was?
No, I don't. I didn't look. I didn't know I'm gonna need this.
Kara, if he could get the model number on those Cutler Hammer boxes,
Way ahead of you.
and then contact Cutler Hammer, he can find out what year the boxes were.
The very important thing is the wire, because like I said, VX, if they separate, they separate this probably long time ago, because it was done by VX, not even MC cable, VX is the cable without the ground, and they don't use that since 1970s, probably 75.
Well, probably. Is it 75,
Experience,
76, 77,
like
or
I
78, or
basically
79?
right now, I base
Mr. Chairman, can I just jump? What was your name, sir?
Marson.
Morrison. You're gonna buy this place.
Yes.
And I assume right now, you wanna make sure that you could put 5 panels in these apartments.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what you want.
Yes.
You get a certification from us to say that's okay, because you don't wanna go forward with buying the property if that won't happen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, is there anybody from the public here that's annoyed with 5 people moving into that house? What are we doing here? 5 people, 5 families, what are we doing here?
Are you going to improve the property?
Oh, yes.
I'm not saying, we're asking a lot of questions going down the history of electricity.
We're trying
I
to,
got a problem with.
we're trying to establish, listen, maybe that's a reason to grant,
I
use variance, but not
to
for-
go the variance here.
You gotta look at precedents.
The problem is if it's pre-existing, if it's legitimately pre-existing, we don't have the authority to deny that.
right, you have to say
It's
yes.
outside of our authority.
Right, that's what
Now,
we're trying to get
The
to.
question is, do we have sufficient proof that it's pre-existing? And right now,
To speed things along, I would submit that there's 5 mailboxes outside. If the federal government says there's 5 separate mailboxes, I would go with that. But that's just.
but were they there in 1977 is the question.
Right.
It's not a question of what's there
Right.
today, it's a question of what was there before the zoning was implemented, so it's not quite so simple. It seems to me that we have a pretty good witness testimony on 600. I don't know if we need anything else there, but on the other property, 555, 551, whatever that is, it's kind of sketchy. There's a lot of things that would lead us to think that, yeah, maybe it was 4 or 5 units, but the testimony from the witness says there were 2 units in the front house, and then, of course, 1 in the back, so you got 3 based on testimony from the witness, but I don't see a clear path to getting to 4 units in that house. Unless we get some other evidence to support it. Yes.
Sir, when you were evaluating the electrical box itself, you were obviously evaluating the electrical supply to the furnace, correct?
Yes.
How many heating units are in that building now?
2 oil for the first units and electrical for upstairs.
Okay. Based upon is there any evidence that shows that there were more than just those two heating units, boilers or oil burner furnace prior? Like, you know, is there staining on the floor that indicates a unit was taken out and that one was replaced?
No, nothing I saw.
Okay. As far as the electrical services, there's a picture of that's supplied to us here. This is actually a square D box, not the
Cutler,
panel
yeah.
you're referring to. So the
Is
square
that
D box.
600 or is that?
No, this is 551.
I didn't get that far down the deck, so.
No, that's it.
No, that's a 600, that's not a...
Well, it was in the packet with 551 to 555. Is this in the wrong packet?
Maybe I'm confused. I thought the discussion was about the meter on the outside.
Yeah, I thought they.
No. Well, they were talking about the actual panel. So I see this picture.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is in,
No, that's square D, but I thought that's a Cutlass Hammer, yeah.
Here's the other question. The wire itself that's inside the VX,
Mm-hmm.
is that wire PVC coated? Is it rubber insulated coated? Is it fabricated coated? Or is
You
it,
have to open you only can see outside.
because if you can tell that, you can tell what year it is.
Then I would have to open the box and check what's inside the box.
then you
I
also
don't know.
have to,
Or somebody would.
Anyway, the conclusion of the question is, if there has always been 4 units there, then there would have been 4 panels
Right.
inside. So this
I
may have-
don't think there's any question that it was originally built as a duplex. It was converted to 4 units at some time. The question is,
When?
did that happen before 1977?
exactly.
Exactly.
We'll put it this way, but he's onto something, because if he can go there, open the box, and take a picture and tell us what type of wire is there, you can identify what year the different wire upgrades were.
Correct, but if we're looking for if we're looking for the fact that there was 4 units, we would need to have.
You ready for this? Right, all 4. So if all 4, for example, had, let's say, rubber insulated cabling or fabric insulated cabling in all 4, I'm not testifying. I have a construction background, but he would be able to testify that means that was installed in the 1960s, which would be prior to 1970. If it's PVC coated wire in there, it's gonna have a problem. But
All right, so here's the thing. We're working really hard to make the applicant's case for them.
yeah, I know.
And as much as we like to be helpful, I think we need compelling, well, my opinion, and I'll open it up to comments from the board. I think 600, we haven't talked about in a lot of detail, but based on your witness testimony, it's clear to me that unless somebody's challenging that witness, I think that's an easy case to make. The other one, is it 551? 555? I mean, we see there's 3 units, it's obviously a duplex with apartment over the garage, but getting the extra 2 units in the main building, I think is gonna require some additional proof of something that establishes that prior to 1977, and I don't want the board to do the work of getting there.
Mr. Chairman, if you can give me 1 minute, I'd just like to talk with my clients, and possibly we could come up with some way to deal with both of these tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. Can we ask our fire chief and he's a lifelong resident, you know, is that a possibility?
We can call them on the phone, but, you know.
Well, or she can contact the fire chief.
Yeah.
Joe knows, I'm sorry, Joe knows that it's been a 5-family for years.
Well, do you want to call him? Get him
So-
ask him if he'll come as a
If
witness.
he would testify, then that would,
When I left my house, Joe was home.
Here.
We don't doubt it was for years. The question is, was
When?
it before 1977?
And I think that Joe may be able to testify.
So let someone try to get him.
Who's calling Joe? I'll give you his number.
Which one of you wants to call Joe? We'll give you his number.
You want?
Can we take a 5-minute recess?
why don't we take a 15-minute recess? We're gonna hold a microphone up to somebody's phone, so everybody can hear him.
Mike, you want to get him on your phone?
Yeah, I just had the number up. Actually, I remember the number.
How do you spell Michigan again?
And the FCI, I don't know, I don't remember.
He's a fire marshal.
Fire chief.
Fire chief. How do you spell his last name?
MECSEY, Mexi.
Are we gonna need any questions to him regarding 600?
We got
I think
600 got nailed.
600's good. Hi, Joe. It's Ray Buckwalter with the Land Use Board. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am great, and I appreciate you taking the phone call. We're in the middle of an application, and the crux of this is that we have an applicant who has a property 551 to 555 South Main Street? North Main Street.
Yes.
And the question, they need to find someone who can testify to establish that there's been 5 units in that property, 4 in the main building and 1 over the garage, prior to 1977, because that's when the first zoning was enacted.
Right, and before you answer the question, we just want to swear you in.
Okay,
Can you raise your right hand?
sure.
And do you swear that the testimony you're going to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And what's your address?
My address is 602 South Main Street.
Okay, and how long have you lived there?
I've lived there. It was my father's house. He purchased this in 1977.
Ooh.
Okay. How old were you in 1977?
I was 12 years old.
Where'd you live prior to 1977?
Right next door to this place for 3 years.
Okay, so you lived next door since 1974, correct?
Correct.
So in 1974, you were then 9 years old.
9.
Can you remember back when you were like prior to 12? And specifically, can you remember how many units were in
I can remember as a kid playing in them creeks that run behind there and having the senior people that lived in them places chase us out of there almost regularly.
Okay, so how many units were in the front building in 553 to 555 North Main, let's say prior to 1977, before you moved into the house that you currently live in?
I remember out into the front there, I believe that was 2 rentals that were split in half, the big house, and there was someone living into the back section there. When it went to 4 units, I don't know. I know there was a couple fires in there with electrical services through the early 80s when I was a junior and stuff as a firefighter in 81.
Well, put it this way, when you went...
That was done.
Okay, so in 1981, were there 2 units there or 4 units?
That was 4 units. There was an electrical fire in the upstairs unit there and had some electrical then they were able, fire department saved it and remodeled it. It was remodeled and stuff then.
So we're trying to get back to 1977.
Like I said, I remember the back unit being there as a young man in the creek and stuff there, and up in the front, it was always at least 2 families. I don't know for sure if it was multiple 4 families or not.
All right, Joe.
I don't know. Do you remember? That's a good question. By any chance, do you remember how many mailboxes they had out in the front?
Out in the front, there was always, I can't, because there was always rows and groups of mailboxes, so it's really hard to determine. It's just like it is today. Everybody on North Main Street's mailbox is on one side of the street, and it's still that way today.
So just to recap, as of 1981, you can recall 4 units in the main building and 1 unit in the rear.
Yes, correct.
But as of 1977, he only remembers 2 in the front and 1 in the rear.
You don't have to focus on the negative. Let's focus on
I
the positive.
understand. All right, Joe, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe.
All right.
So there's a bunch of avenues to research to see if you can close the gap. The gap's now narrowed a lot. One is the type of wiring.
Which
The other is,
hopefully was not changed by the electrical fire.
well, it had to have been changed by the electrical fire.
That's the only concern
Right.
I had.
So
when we started talking about that.
you still have two other avenues, post office and the census. And if you talk to the tax assessor, I'm telling you, they have these records. I looked at my records, I got from 1968, I went all the way back to the
That was Essex,
1920s.
right?
No, this was when the tax was on how many occupants
That was
were in.
Essex County.
Yeah, county. But you need to talk to a tax assessor to find out where those records are.
A little
So I think,
3x5.
So give me 1 second.
Quick question here.
yeah,
What is and I think it may have partially answered, not included, what is the significance between the two-family versus the four-family? Right now, if it's one unit, and there was two families in there, that makes it a multi-unit dwelling, right?
I already asked that question quietly, and
And Bruce asked it out loud.
Yeah.
The fact is, multifamily's not allowed, but they're seeking a certification for a certain number of units. They're seeking the certification for 4 units. They don't want just 2 units. They want 4 units.
well, 3
I understand
technically,
what-
but
Well,
there's several
yeah,
buildings.
yeah.
Okay, so they can't get a certification for multifamily?
Multifamily doesn't do it for them. They need a certification for 4 units if they want to rent 4 units.
Okay, I mean, because to me, multifamily could be 2 to 6.
Yeah, that would be if it's in the zoning, but it's not. So what they
Multifamily,
need to do is turn the clock back and say, we had this existing use prior to zoning, which would be 4 units. Right now, we know that there was 3 on the property, 2 in the front building, 1 in the back. The board's really trying hard to make a case for this applicant, I think, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, we also have concerns about, the number of people in that building. So I think it's incumbent on you to come back with something to convince the board that, you have a gap of 4 years there. And we need something that convince this board. And then if that evidence is compelling, I think this board is legally compelled to grant certification. But I think that's what we need to do. Yes.
I really appreciate your time. I know you guys brought up the multi-families and they don't want to do that, get it, so do I. My question is, we have 5 meters, so the house is recognized by the electrical company as a 5-family. We have 4 separate hot water units, 5 separate hot water units. Okay, so again, the electric company is acknowledging that this is a 5-family, and everyone's being charged as a 5-family. You have 5 mailboxes. You have, everything down the road leads to 5. It's been a legal non-conforming use for years.
It's been a legal non-conforming use since when?
That's the question.
That's the question. You answered your own question.
Thank you for summarizing your case. The crux of it is, can we get to 1977?
Right.
Because that's what we need to do, establish that it was there in 1977.
And we really can't thank the board enough for all of your help, your professionals, to everybody. We know that we have a difficult task, and what we would like to do this evening, if the board is open to it, is to proceed with a vote on 600. We have some additional information we can present to you if you feel it's necessary. Certainly don't want to keep
Let
you
me
here any
ask the
longer
board,
than you have
because you
to.
had a witness that testified, and I think if everyone on the board understands what we're doing here, then does anybody on the board need any additional information on 600 after hearing the testimony from the witness that there were 4 units there?
No, 3.
Pardon?
600 is,
4.
No,
4.
oh, right, sorry. I'm confused.
It's gonna be a hard time there, Mike.
Ray,
If we don't need to hear the additional testimony, then
and Ray, it wasn't simply that there were 4 units. There were 4 units there, her testimony since the 1960s.
Correct. Thank you. So, unless anybody on the board needs to hear more information about 600, then I would suggest we just go ahead and vote. John, what is
the motion?
What's the motion look like?
The motion would be to certify that there were 4 lawfully created apartments in the building at 600 South Main since the 1960s, and that they are therefore, they are pre-existing, non-conforming, entitled to continue.
You need to put 1977 in there?
In
You
the
can write it,
resolution,
you can
I'll
write it
have,
however you want to write
Yeah.
it. Does everyone on the board understand what we're voting on?
you're going to certify that they're entitled, that the 4 units in 600 South Main are entitled to continue.
Hearing no questions, I'll ask for a motion. Thank you. Thank you again. Roll call.
Paul Bean.
Yes.
Joseph Chichella. Frank Marchetta.
Yes.
Ray Walter.
Yes.
Bruce Williams.
Yes.
Gary Hill.
Yes.
John Marie Condas. Joseph Fiamma.
Yes.
Jeremy Blunt.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you again. And then what we would like to do with 551, 555 is ask that the board give us an adjournment to the next meeting. We'll come back. Certainly, I don't know, what's the date of your next meeting, Jen?
It is the second Thursday, so it will be the 9th, April 9th.
April 9th.
So you want to continue the hearing on 551 to 555 to April 9 without need for further notice, correct?
Correct. And during that time, we will look into all of those issues as well as anything else we might be able to find and present to the board as quickly as we have it, the findings, so that you have it prior to the meeting.
So a question, is there anybody in the audience that's here for this application that has any questions? And does everyone who's here understand that it's being continued without notice to the next meeting?
Is anyone here other than someone related to the applicant, meaning, anyone here opposed to the application as distinguished from in support of the application? Anyone here in opposition? No. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you, I've got one question that I think Attorney Drill can answer. Are we close enough that we could ask the board to make a decision on that, or do we have to have a number?
No, I don't think you're close enough.
If the applicant wants to ask us to vote, I would allow them to do that, but we don't have, I mean, to me, it's kind of a leap of faith that we don't really have any evidence.
They've proved 2 in the front and 1 in the back.
Right, I understand.
Or if they wanted to amend it to 3, we could certainly.
But if they want to get 4 in the front and 1 in the back and withstand just because someone's not here in opposition, doesn't mean that there's not someone out there that could appeal it. So if you wanted to make a decision and make it appeal-proof, you would want to get airtight proof. If you were, let's just say, hypothetically, that you felt bad and you'd want to grant them the relief and you just want to say something even though they didn't have the proof, that's not only not appeal-proof, if someone appealed that would almost be a slam-dunk reversal.
Right, no, I was just asking because I know as a resident of North Main Street for 49 years, you know.
Well, were you there prior to 1977?
Yes.
Well, then, let me ask.
I can't testify that there was 4 family units in the building.
Okay, because if you did, we'd make you a witness and you'd recuse yourself.
That's what I'm telling you, I can't. I just kind of know that it's been that way for a long, long time.
Right, that's what the applicant says. It's been that way for a long, long time.
And that's why I'm saying, I think they will eventually get to their 1970. I just thought that.
Well, they're getting close.
Board thought, a decision that we could move forward with it. But if it's got to be black and white, then that was my question, and you're telling me it's kind of got to be black and white.
Just a gentle question, without a
Frank.
yes or no answer. Do you recall the number of mailboxes at the time?
Frank?
Put a picture of the house on social media.
Guys? Frank?
Just clarification.
That's a good idea.
There was, expert testimony about the electrical boards.
Yep.
Just for clarification, because I'm still not clear. I think the witness testified it was one thing, and then Gary said it was not.
Correct. Gary said it was a square D, and the witness ended up saying, oh, Gary's right, it's square D. They have to look, he's going to have to look into that stuff.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
So the testimony wasn't correct.
Well, the witness corrected himself after hearing what Gary said and after looking at the picture.
All right, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So we're gonna adjourn this and carry it to the next meeting. I also want to just let you know that that meeting may or may not take place physically, depending on what the situation is. So we'll be able to, I think we'll be able to do this electronically, and John has some information on that.
Yeah,
You wanna?
just so in case things get worse than they are now, I sent out to all my chairmen of all the boards I represent and all the board secretaries two things. An article I had written in 2014 when we had the hurricane on electronic participation in a meeting, and the DCA released guidance today on the Open Public Meetings Act, which was consistent with my article. If you have an administrative matter, you can do it by conference call. But if it's a hearing, you need to see the witness. So what we would do is we would have the board secretary here in the room, and hopefully, if everyone has laptops that have a camera on them, between Ray, the board secretary, and some other, let's say, some IT tech people, we either find Facebook, we either find GoToMeeting, either find
Skype, whatever.
Skype, there's a whole bunch of them, and you would have, everyone else would be participating in the meeting from their home. The attorney would have the witnesses and everything at her office or somewhere, or they could be in the municipal building, and you'd hold a meeting like that. You'd hold it's not even a virtual meeting, you'd hold a real meeting, and the Open Public Meetings Act allows electronic participation. So that's how this thing could go down in April, unless maybe things get better and they don't get worse. If they stay the same, we'll be here again.
So, along those lines, excuse me, if you do have evidence, you may not be able to present it physically in person here. So I think that's an important distinction.
Submit it ahead of time.
Submit it ahead of time. So whatever you're going to present as evidence going back to 1977, we'll have ahead of time, and then we'll, because we won't be able to obviously pass things around and so on.
Yeah, I'll certainly send that via email as soon as we have it, so everyone has the benefit.
Okay, Bill, you had a question?
Yes, so
Post office,
we
good idea.
have a vote, a contingency vote that they have, get us proof by the next meeting, instead of...
I was thinking about that, and I'll ask Attorney Drill if we wanted to do a vote and say contingent on evidence, but the problem is the board hasn't seen the evidence.
Correct.
So it's kind of difficult if...
Motion that we have to,
Well, who's the judge of whether the evidence
say
is
something?
compelling?
They represented that, Joe Meshi, they talked to him on the phone, no problem, he knows it was 4 units prior to 1977, we get him on the phone, what did he say? 1981. Okay?
Do you think written evidence would be different? Do you think if it was conditioned on some sort of written evidence?
The 1977, I mean, seriously, whether it's you, Ray, whether it's me.
No, I'm asking the question because I thought of that as well. If the applicant was willing to do that, and we would, and our attorney said that there's a legal mechanism to do it, maybe we could say, okay, if you present evidence and we have somebody that's appointed to be the judge of the validity of that evidence.
You're gonna delegate the decision. I mean, that's up to you.
Well, it's up to the board, because basically then you're going to delegate the decision on whether that evidence is legitimate or not to someone, whether it's our engineer or
Let's say this,
someone.
if Ms. Kaczynski contacts the post office tomorrow, hypothetically, and they confirm that in 1977, there were 4 addresses out there, 551A and B, 553A and B, and 555, and she can send something. Doesn't that answer the question?
Done. I would agree.
You guys decide.
76, though.
All I'm saying is,
Before 77.
if someone, let's say you do that, you want to do it, you do it. If you know me, I'm conservative about it. If someone wants to appeal that and say, you can, it's one thing to delegate a change in an engineering detail to the engineer, or a change in the landscape plan to the planner, but you're going to delegate the decision on whether or not to grant the certification. Someone, I mean, you want to do it, but if someone appeals on that basis, I don't want to spend your money defending that.
Well, how about if we say if they provide proof from the 1970 census that...
We've already told them. You've told them. If you get it from the census before 1977,
the clock is ticking, if they're standing there and you're sitting there,
But with all due respect, I don't mean to throw anyone under the bus, but they could have done all this stuff and brought it tonight.
Some of their work.
Okay? I mean, you guys have done more work for this applicant than I've ever seen you do for any other applicant. I'm just saying. This much? It's some people you may have a majority of people, you don't need 5, you may have a majority of people who want to do that. I don't think it's a good idea, but if they want to do it.
So by show of hands, how many people would delegate the certification of the evidence of the pre-existing condition prior to 1977 to someone who's elected, appointed by the board? And then the
Yeah,
applicant,
not me.
the applicant would be able to call for a vote tonight based on supplying that evidence. And then once that evidence is supplied, the resolution, well, we'd have a resolution tonight to say contingent on the evidence and the certification of the evidence.
Question about the evidence. You have to say what evidence is acceptable.
Well, I don't think we know what we're gonna get.
We're gonna go based on expert testimony, but for instance, the electrical boxes where we find out that expert was wrong, and we base our decision on that.
I'm not comfortable.
We need to identify what we would accept.
Right, but I think that's hard, Frank, because we don't know what they can get.
Well, then maybe it's not a food thing good.
And that's why I'm on Bruce's kind of camp. It's kind of hard to say, I don't want to be responsible for saying that I'm an expert on electrical boxes. You know, if it's something like the post office or the census, that's a slam dunk.
Mr. Chairman,
It might not be. It might be something that.
We would actually prefer to take the better course of valor and come back. Let us take a look.
Well, you've made our decision for us, and then I can ask for a motion to adjourn.
And what we'll do, again, is to present the information to you so that way, if you know how you're going to vote, because it is sufficient, we're here for 30 seconds.
Yep.
I just need to be here, but we could even maybe,
Yeah,
if
can I
we
tell you
have to do
something
it that
else?
way.
Since I already have to do a resolution for 600, I mean, I could draft one for 555 and leave in some blanks and then fill it in that night, so they wouldn't lose, the 30 days.
That would be wonderful.
I think we should do that, yeah.
And I may ask you to assist with the drafting, just so you know.
You know I draft a good resolution, John.
Now, I'm not going to say, I'm looking for assistance with the drafting.
That would be wonderful if you would do that. We'll present the information as quickly as we can and limit the time that we're
Ed
here.
Beglin listening to the testimony about a Posse traction. Does anybody remember that movie?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. So we need to see 2 skid marks coming off the sidewalk next month, and we'll be good. Got it?
You got it.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second, all in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Thank you all very much.